Well, hello, Heather. It's been a while. Would you like to share a coffee with me or other alternate drink of choice?
I have the cacao ready. It's cold though, because I've been waiting weeks to run into you.
Well, it's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. And I'm feeling a lot of feelings this morning. There's so much spinning in my head around like everything coming out about artificial intelligence, the devastating impact it's having on the planet, water, energy use, the implications for everyday people, and especially for those who are resisting oppression and fascism. The normalizing of artificial intelligence, how it's everywhere, it's being pushed everywhere. Then there's the impact of oppression being validated by the federal government in the US, which is having knock on effects through the states, through organizations, through private companies, individuals, and across the world. And just yesterday, our friend and colleague Kay was talking about people being in emergency mode in the US. And I know of people here in Colombia who have lost jobs and funding. And for me personally, I don't live in the United States anymore. And I don't know what it feels like right now to be around people that scared. I did spend a couple of years fully immersed in the experiences of asylum seekers and refugees in the United Kingdom. And so I do understand what it's like to be around that constant uncertainty and stress. And they want us to be in a constant state of stress because when we're like this, it is hard to connect with other people. It's hard to be in relationship. It's hard to strategize, to think clearly and organize when we're in a constant state of stress. I think during the first Trump presidency, there was some of this, but more of it was outrage. And now it's more a kind of existential stress due to impacts on more people, including people with more privilege and power who weren't so impacted in the first presidency. And so, what's on my mind today is nervous system regulation. My daughter is 16, and there's like this saying for younger generations about touching grass that some people never touch grass. Touching grass means being in touch with the physical world and not just engaging virtually through our phones, our laptops, our desktops, our tablets, like we're doing right now. It's going out and being with this stunning planet on which we live. Yesterday, the sun had come out for the first time in a while, and I left the house and immediately was hit with this quality of the air that reminded me of England, like a spring or summer evening in England. It was about 5 p.m. here, so there was only 1 hour left of light, and it was just delicious and nostalgic, and it fed me. It was sad as well as delicious. And it fed me in a way that being on a Zoom call with my friends in England can't do. And our sense of urgency in these times can make it seem like we don't have time to touch grass. We have to figure out how to make money. We have to figure out how to protect loved ones. There is no time to touch grass. But I argue, and I believe the science does too, brain science, that we won't be as creative. We won't come up with as good strategies if our nervous system isn't regulated. So, if we want to keep as many people as safe as possible, if we want to figure out how best to live in these times, if it's that urgent, then we have to slow down or we will make big mistakes and we will miss excellent opportunities for connection, for building solidarity, for resisting effectively. We can't skip that part or else it will backfire. And that's so hard to get our heads around because it feels like the house is on fire. But for most of us, it literally is not on fire. If we want to make good decisions about how to respond to the genocide in Gaza, for example, or what's happening in Sudan, places where houses and people are literally on fire, we need to think clearly. We need to decide with others, and we won't be able to do that if we're acting as if our house is on fire. We need all of our senses alive and well and directed towards what makes sense in these times. Grounding ourselves, reading physical books, getting fresh air, water, healthy food, getting together with people, laughing and thinking together, and touching grass together.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And it brings many things to my mind, but in particular, I feel like the phrase rest as resistance comes to my mind because I imagine that some, of course, I'm not speaking for anybody else but myself, but I imagine that some people feel like it is more important for them to be out there doing all the work that needs to be done, and that taking even a moment for themselves is abusing their privilege. And I believe that's unfortunate for the reasons that you've just talked about. We ultimately exist in physical bodies. These bodies need rest, they need sustenance, they need water. In fact, I was looking through an article the other day. I can't remember the source or the author, but this person was saying one of the best things we can do for our own health and longevity is get a good night's sleep. And you and I are both aware of, for our different bodies, what happens to us in terms of our minds when we don't just get a plain old good night's sleep. Sleep, hydration, good food, there's no substitute for that. We cannot replace a good sleep with good work and expect the results to be the same. So that's just one level of reflection that I have on what you've shared. And from the perspective then of privilege, we have to engage with the emotions that come up when we even consider stepping away from our work to take care of ourselves. And this has been a long-standing type of dialogue or discourse, if you will, perhaps is maybe a better word. It's certainly not unique to you and me. Many people have talked about this over the years. And there are voices that continue to remind people of that which you are talking about, the necessity of caring for ourselves as individuals that exist in individual bodies. So, what I'm grappling with, I think, perhaps, is an extension of that concept of caring for ourselves a little bit outward beyond the physical to other aspects that you and I have been talking about that are not just about our bodies, but are very much related. And in the case of, let's say, many of the audiences that you and I have been engaging with, these are job seekers. These are small business owners, freelancers, some of them who were terminated from their jobs unfairly for reasons that are perhaps for a different conversation. Some of them who felt that the work they were doing no longer aligned with their values and they decided to start their own thing. And we have engaged with people in these different groups, and a message that I have been holding on to that you have brought to these audiences is the idea of honest work. And early on, when you and I first started talking last year in workshops that I attended, that you hosted, you said that perhaps the work that needs to be done in this world is not necessarily the work that will bring us revenue. And if that's the case, that means we must also consider what can we do to bring in revenue in a way that meets our values. And there are other forms of guilt that come up when people consider that. There are other forms of questions around our capacity. What can I do to bring in revenue that also gives me the capacity to do the work that needs to be done that may not pay the bills? And there are also aspects of privilege and associated guilt that may go through our minds as we consider that. That, listen, there may be people who have no concerns about financial situations whatsoever, and they can be out there holding the signs or doing the chants, being on the streets, protesting, and doing all sorts of other things 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And these people are not necessarily the people we should be comparing ourselves to. It doesn't mean just because they're out there all the time that they are more superior or they are even more effective than the things that we do in our limited capacity, because we may have to step away for 40 to 60 hours a week to do other work that hopefully at least has some alignment with our values, but meets our essential needs that, at least in the direct sense, are non-physical. They're about our pocketbook. But I would argue that if you don't have the pocketbook needs met, there are some physical consequences to that. Even in the sense of stress, I remember reading an article many years ago, and again, I don't have the source for it on tap, but it said that one of the biggest conflicts between couples, romantic couples, involve finances. And if you're not in a couple, if you live on your own, then there may not be conflicts with others about finances, but you're also in a more limited situation in terms of capacity. So I just wanted to raise this to expand the conversation a little bit around care and the idea of touching grass, and reflect on the feelings that come up, particularly the feelings that folks who already have certain kinds of privilege may have. Because there's this notion that I grapple with, thinking of yet another article where I forget the source, the idea that some of the most privileged people also can be some of the people who are least willing to take risk because of various reasons, because of discomfort, because of, some people talk about golden handcuffs and the limitations of speaking your mind when you know that your revenue streams could be cut, and so on and so forth. And this could be a much deeper conversation, not a new conversation, but certainly a conversation I feel you and I have particularly personal experiences with,
Mm.
within ourselves, as well as within the communities of people that we exist in and the people that we coach and so on.
Yeah, I think it's true as well that poorer people are more generous, so they're giving more of their like percentage of their income and resources than people who are better off. Yeah. Yeah, I think I love talking about honest jobs and things like that. Yeah, I think it's it's important to think about where our energy goes, like you say, like making sure that we have enough capacity to do the work that needs to be done, but still getting our needs met. And I think there's another conversation to be had around what is meant by needs, um, because there's a lot of manufactured needs that aren't like honestly needs. Um, yeah. And you and I are working on lots of little projects on how to support people, particularly livelihoods, so that people can be grounded in their values while grappling with these, very important issues. And we should probably plug that June 17th, we've got an event coming up on how to talk about gaps in your resume. So, this is particularly for those people who need to be or who are looking to be employed, because you're more likely to have to show your resume when you're applying for a job rather than if you're freelance, right? So, and I encourage people to join us if you like the way that we ground all of our conversations, because it's not just us putting on this event. There's a few people. We're now part of a launch of something called the Liberatory Livelihood Association, and I'll put a link obviously in the show notes. But all of us are really deeply committed to the kind of values that you hear us speak to throughout the podcast and that we both write about. And you've got your TikTok and YouTube videos as well. And I think you're starting to make some of those into Substack um, messages as well. So, yeah, I don't want people to feel like, and remember last month or something, I did a live YouTube with Lorraine Smith, and she opened up the conversation by saying there are people that go to their sustainability jobs, but they leave their soul in the parking lot. And so I think what is missing is a place for people to have their soul at the same time as they grapple with livelihood issues. It's like not leaving the context in which we're living, not leaving that at the door or when you enter a space to talk about resumes and it sounds like a very practical dot, dot, dot. But instead, it's like, no, we're coming into this as full human beings with all the grief and the rage and the trauma, and especially for those folks who find it particularly challenging given the barriers that the system puts out, towards some people. Some people find it easier to get jobs than others, right? So that is is totally what we're about. Yeah, and I'll put links to everything in the show notes, but I think this is how we're trying to be of service to people during these times. Um, in a way that just didn't seem as urgent even a year ago when we first met, Chris, whatever month that was.
Yes, I agree. And I think what I'm taking away from today's conversation, our first in a couple of weeks, is that we, and I'm talking you and I specifically in this case, we are doing work that integrates practicality with values to the best of our abilities. Now, for me specifically, I know that I have been interested since my college days in the idea of how do we express our value systems through our work. And back then, when I was a college student studying aeronautical engineering, the people I was around were not talking in these ways. There were very, very few people, and just this is probably a lengthier conversation for another time, but I went to college in the USA, and during my sophomore year, second year, I decided as an aeronautical engineering student that I did not want to work on weapons systems. Well, a big part of the aerospace sector in the USA is weapons systems. So straight away, much of that world was closed off to me through my own choice. So fast forward to today, I am seeing repeatedly in different ways, particularly given the Trump regime, I'm seeing repeatedly in different ways what does it mean to express our values through our work. And now, in a way that I didn't have back in college, I have the sense of what am I in service of through my work? So, not just my values as an individual, but the way I serve certain systems that have certain impacts. Now, we don't need to anthropomorphize systems and say that they express values, but in a way, they do in terms of the effects that systems have on the world and the incentives that systems establish and what are the different components that keep systems going, that keep them perpetuating. The things that we're seeing in the USA right now, they're not new. They're built on old ideas, old sentiments, and we can talk at length about white supremacy, about European colonization. Of course, those go back hundreds of years, if not further. So, what I'm leaving with today is this idea that there are ways, I believe, for us to care for ourselves and care for each other if we believe those are key values. And of course, I certainly do, and you do as well. There are ways to do that through our work. And the word work can be very much a loaded term, but work can look in different forms. Or very simply, we talk about our actions, our behavior, our choices. Some of those actions may be related to revenue, paying our bills. Some of them may not. But it doesn't eliminate the value of the work that may not bring us revenue. It's all part of the holistic self. It's all part of us as individuals expressing ourselves and us being contributors to communities and how communities express themselves. Each of these could be very lengthy conversations, but that blob of thoughts is what I'm leaving with today, and perhaps for elaboration more in the future.
You gonna touch any grass today, Chris?
Yes, I would like to. I have a habit of taking a walk every day, rain or shine. It's actually in my daily planner. I think it's going to rain today, but I have an umbrella and I have rain boots. So, yes. Well, I may not touch grass, it'll be wet and muddy, but I will at least be outside for a little bit.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go for a walk on the edge of town where it's a bit more countryside. That's a bit more like England. It's got horses and I love the way the grass here is actually like it's bumpy. Like it's not like a smooth like
Mowed surface. Yeah.
yeah, like in England it's all like very like manicured. Here it's like more tufts. It looks a bit like illustrations from a Dr. Seuss book or something, like with these tufts of green.
Yeah.
So I want to walk uh over that side of town. Yeah.
Well, I wish you a great experience touching grass today and hopefully tomorrow and in the near future as well.
And you take
Thank
care,
you.
Chris.
Bye bye. See you next
Bye.
time. You have been listening to Morning Tinto with Heather Luna and Chris Musay Sequeira. Each time we record, we use the news of the day to be as freshly brewed as possible. So subscribe, follow along, and comment if you can. Let us know what you think, and we will talk to you soon. Bye bye.